In today's technologically driven world, the younger generation and anyone in general has access to almost anything they could want to view at the tips of their fingers. Video games, on-demand movies, streaming, television, virtual reality. Stimulating one's senses comes easy in the 2020s. In the decades of the past, though, entertainment was far different for those growing up on Cape Cod, in New England, in the world in general. Those that grew up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, you know what I'm talking about. On Cape Cod, we've had the Cape Cod Mall that's been popular for over 50 years as a hangout spot, although maybe not as much today. The Cape Cod Baseball League, for a century, has consistently provided family-friendly fun. And there's miniature golf, there was bowling, and more have been go-tos for kids and families. However, once upon a time, there was another outlet for family entertainment located in a rural, wooded area near Route 6A in the town of Brewster. It was where kids could see creatures both familiar and new to them, many in a hands-on way. This was not a zoo per se, it was an animal farm. It was Bassett's Wild Animal Farm. The idea of the wild animal farm, similar in theory to a petting zoo on Cape Cod, was the brainchild of Harry Bud Bassett. Bassett was born and raised in the town of Brewster, a part of the Brewster-Bassett family lineage. From an early age, he was a lover of animals and the environment. After fighting in World War II and working in the private sector as part of Cape and Vineyard Electric Company until he was in his early 30s, Bassett decided to act on his love of animals, as well as his large tract of land on Tubman Road in Brewster. In 1959, Bud, along with his wife Olivia, began dreaming up an animal farm after Olivia gave him a pair of deer as a birthday present. Bassett purchased more land to the south of his farm to accommodate more animals. He would end up including creatures familiar to Cape Codders, like rabbits, raccoons, Canadian geese, skunks, and more. And that's all well and good, but the true appeal of this endeavor was those animals not native to Cape Cod. Bassett would purchase those creatures from reputable dealers at game farms in the south. He would prove his love of animals by selling those that did not naturally hibernate during the winter to southern farms in the fall, and then purchasing the animals again in the spring. Initially known as Bassett's Game Farm, it would have its grand opening on May 2nd, 1959. It cost 50 cents for adults and 30 cents for children to enjoy the sights of the familiar and unfamiliar animals nestled in the peaceful pine forest. It was a much more fulfilling experience for people to see these animals in a natural environment rather than a city zoo with concrete and skyscrapers and the sounds of city ambiance all around them. The pony rides, hay rides, petting zoo, and more attracted throngs of families to the 20-acre farm. The venture was an overwhelming success, and by 1962, there were more than 50 species of animals at the now called Bassett's Wild Animal Farm. As his farm grew in popularity, Bassett added llamas and a black bear among other creatures. It became a staple of summer family outings and school trips as the 1960s wore on. In the 1970s, Bassett added a leopard, a mountain lion, several coatimundi, and a few Patagonian cavies, which is a rodent that looks kind of like a cross between a rabbit and a kangaroo. It's pretty small. In the years before Cape Cod was dotted with coyotes and great white sharks, seeing these types of creatures was definitely a unique experience. In 1979, after nearly 20 years of sharing his love of animals with Cape Codders, visitors, and their families, Bud Bassett decided that it was time to sell and retire. He found buyers in Gail and Donald Smithson, who were looking for a place to begin an Appaloosa horse breeding farm. Initially, the Smithsons were not going to continue with Bassett's Wild Animal Farm. They were going to close it and start raising horses. But that was until the grounds were being toured and Gail fell in love with the animals there. So she kept the attraction going, simply adding her Appaloosa horses to the mix. After selling the farm, the Bassetts moved from Brewster up to Maryville, Maine. Gail Smithson did not take the legacy of Bassett's Wild Animal Farm lightly. During her first few years, she did extensive repairs and renovations, trying to make the farm as impressive to those perhaps seeing it for the first time. She improved the cages some of the animals were kept in and added Indian zebus, another mountain lion, and an African lion for visitors to gaze upon. Smithson also integrated her horses into the farm as part of the pony rides and hay rides. In 1994, a Bengal tiger cub named Okemo was brought in to be part of the popular attraction. Although Bassett's Wild Animal Farm continued to be widely patronized by families and school field trips, an incident involving that Bengal tiger would spell the end of the line. In May of 2000, a 14-year-old employee at the farm was bitten by the tiger on her right calf after entering the cage to feed the 500-pound animal, not knowing the trap door was open. Concerns from the federal licensing agency, which oversaw all animal parks, were twofold. First, whether the animal was rabid, and second, whether the girl had the appropriate paperwork to even be employed there. In the years leading up to the incident, there'd been minor protests about the captivity of the animals, most notably by local artist Malcolm Wells in 1996. This incident with a large cat was too much to ignore. Bassett's Wild Animal Farm closed in 2002. Bud Bassett, despite spending his remaining years in Maine and then Florida, continued contributing to Cape Cod in other ways. Before his passing in 2010, he and his wife Olivia donated a 1.25 acre chunk of land along Slough Road to the Brewster Conservation Trust. The main parcel of Bassett's Wild Animal Farm along Tubman Road has seen a second life as well. In 2014, an affordable housing project through Habitat for Humanity was approved, with 13.9 acres of land being used for 14 homes ranging from 2 to 4 bedrooms and being ready for living in 2021. The remaining land was sold back to the town of Brewster. Though it's been closed for over 20 years, many residents and visitors to Cape Cod have nothing but fond memories of wandering the seemingly endless maze of animals, some dangerous, some not, and feeling so far away from the typical Cape Cod surroundings. And because of those memories, Bud and Olivia Bassett's showcase for their love of animals will never be forgotten. I can only speak for me growing up as a child of the 1980s, many times going to Bassett's Wild Animal Farm. There are so many pictures of me and my sister Kate. I was probably 6 years old. She was 4. It was an easy place for young parents to bring their children, getting to pet the goats and seeing the ducks and geese, and even seeing the common animals to Cape Cod like raccoons and skunks, but up close, knowing they wouldn't claw you, well, unless you jumped in the cage, I guess. It just felt like a different world. And like I said at the top of this segment, I know that younger people of today, something like a petting zoo with pony rides and hay rides might not seem that appealing, but back in the 70s, 80s, when there was no smartphone, no internet, no streaming, things like petting zoos were huge. How many of you out there from Cape Cod or who visited Cape Cod went to Bassett's Wild Animal Farm or remember it? What were your favorite animals? And I just looked this up for this segment. For those of you wondering, Okemo, the Bengal tiger, and all of the other big cats from Bassett's Wild Animal Farm, they were sent to a Texas wildlife sanctuary, so they lived out their lives safe. Nothing happened to them. I figured some of you might wonder, so I wanted to add that at the end, that those cats lived out their lives safely in a wildlife sanctuary. But thanks for the memories, Bassett's Wild Animal Farm. It made being a child of the 80s on Cape Cod a little more exciting.